All right, what's up, guys? Making a little video here for my good friend Tiger King. He's playing two sit and goes, a $7 or $15, both nine-handed um, fast nines on Bet Online. So we're going to try to break that down for him here. Doing post commentary, recorded his session, and then going to kind of break some hands down. So let's go ahead and get started on that, and let's see how he did. All right, so we got him loaded up here. And still working on some things. Going to try to find a way to record some sessions with the audio of the chips and the cards, and move this down a little bit. So A7 in the big blind early on, we get a min open and a min three bet, which is extremely bizarre, but obviously with A7, that's an easy fold spot. So good spot there from going to get away from that. So video ends up being about 53 minutes long, and I remember watching this. I guess he did this about three or four nights ago now, and played pretty solid. Didn't really make any, large, tremendous mistakes. I just think we probably missed out on some opportunities to chip up, and I think he's been running now for about almost 2 months. Been playing really well, and I think had basically tripled his bankroll playing small stakes, sit and goes, double up, sit and goes, and six-handed also sit and goes, but no cash. I think just maybe one little small session of cash. And there's a good spot why you just don't get involved with A7 out of the big blind. So good to see him just make a standard fold there. And so didn't really like the call with the queen seven diamonds for the min raise out of the small blind. I don't know if that was a misclick on his part, but that hand just doesn't play well. It's early. We had a min raise. Just go ahead and get away from that there. Again, that may have been a misclick, him two tabling. I'm not really sure, but yeah, that's certainly a spot we're not looking to get involved there early on. You could make the argument if you were in the big blind and you were closing the action that maybe that's okay to close off the action there if you want to, raise your variance, get a little gamble there in that spot. Probably not the worst thing ever, but from the small blind, that's just not a good play. I'd rather be three betting there or folding, and we're three betting as a bluff, obviously not for value. So on the left-handed table here, we pick up ace-jack offsuit from middle position. And this is another one of those hands where, no problem. Go ahead and 3x. It's early. The 3x raise is definitely good. Really and truly, you could make a small argument as to folding with a hand like this. This hand gets you in a lot of trouble, nine-handed. And, like deuces plays better opening here because you're looking for one simple spot. Whereas the ace jack becomes a little more difficult. Ace high boards, jack high boards. Are you going to open here and call a three bet? Probably not. So how often want to be opening and folding to one three bet? We don't want to be doing that too often. So I think it's fine to open. I think we want to sort of set the precedent that we're going to be aggressive. But here's the three bet that I'm talking about. And so out of position with that three bet, Cool K has 832 behind. When we make this call, we're going to be putting right at about 500 chips in the middle. So that's going to play very, very, very difficult for us on a lot of boards where we brick. Even jack high boards we're not super happy, and ace high boards we're not extremely happy as well. So I really think, again, a lot of this is based on his stack. With only 832 behind and 500 in the middle, if we come out with a check, if we brick and we check, or even if we get there and we check, he's going to be jamming most of those boards with that stack. And so we're pretty vulnerable with a hand like ace jack. Early on, I would prefer a fold here. Let's take a play here, and let's see what Tiger King decides to do. And essentially that's a 4x three bet too. It's a pretty large three bet. And he does decide to go ahead and make the fold. So I think that was a really good fold in that spot. Uh, could you possibly argue a four bet jam there? I don't think so. I don't think that we're ahead there enough, but and it's early, and so I just don't think increasing the variance is a good play there. So a nice three bet here, excuse me, with kings in position and slightly more than 3x, so or right at 3x. So I like that three bet. And Bond James takes sorry about that, takes three bets to the face here, and so that doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. I've noticed in the lower stakes sit and goes. Um, but that wouldn't really concern me too much at all. Usually three bets to the face there. Usually, now we've seen just really bizarre stuff, um, but usually that is, maybe an ace queen suited, an ace king offsuit, um, jacks maybe and worse. Definitely, nines and worse, tens and more like jacks probably could argue a four bet, but it's still definitely just calling there as well. Um, but you should be able to rule out all hands like suited connectors, 10 jack suited, Broadway suited, king queen suited, king jack. You should be able to throw those hands out. So let's see how the hand plays out here. Ultimately, Taz Devil shoving would be the best play for us. So great spot with kings. Taz Devil has 441. That's about what we're going to be looking to bet if he checks. So let's go ahead and hit play here. And so one thing I did notice is during this session, we got into a habit, Tigerking got into a habit of just betting a lot of half pot. And that's not really that bad because of being balanced. That can be good for balance. However, we want to, based on chip stacks, we want to be able to vary that bet up. We don't always want to be betting half pot. And so I think it's probably better just to go ahead and bet 441 there. Taz either getting in or he's not. Not that we're folding when we bet this small and he goes all in, we're never folding anyway. But just go ahead and bet the 441 because it gives us more maximum value out of Bond James if he decides to call with a hand like maybe he did call with ace jack suited, right? Or maybe he did call with tens and he maybe wants to take a pillow card off there. And we get two folds. And so, I mean, most of the critiquing and the coaching that I'm going to be making is mostly just going to be ways we can just get a little bit better. Um, Not that we misplayed really any hands. It's just with sit and goes, what makes sit and go so difficult is you've got to be able to chip up and have those chips later in the stages. You just don't want to just rely on picking up hands, getting in spots where people have a worse hand, and where people have a worse hand, and that's the only way we have to win. We need to have more areas to pick up chips, be a little bit more well-rounded. So Queen Jack under the gun, offsuit early on, to me, that's just too weak to open up. While I do like to set a precedent also that we're going to be opening under the gun quite a bit, they can also be table dependent. So if I'm going to open up under the gun with my really strong hands, which what we're going to do, I believe to stay balanced correctly, we need to open up with some weaker hands, even something as weak as like nine deuce offsuit that plays really easy. With somebody three bets, we can fold. Um, but maybe wait to save that to the blinds get just a little bit higher because we're just not chipping up enough with the blinds being 10-20. So the table on the right, this is the hand that we talked about earlier where, King 10 of hearts is certainly strong enough out of the big blind. We're closing the action. Probably could also call that out of the small blind, but just to be honest, I'd rather see a 3-bet because your hand just isn't strong enough to call and flop a 10 or a king, and then we're playing out of position where I'd rather see a 3-bet out of the small blind. Out of the big blind, I'd rather see just a flat. I think it plays better just flatting out of the big blind. And the reason why I say that too, the big blind decides to 3-bet, we're just throwing money out the door. So good call here with the King 10. And an easy check here with ace 10 offsuit out of the big blind. And with the King 10, unfortunately, that's just a pretty easy fold. And so everyone checks around here. And so on these turns, we should always, so I kind of have a general rule where I always want to be betting the turns, especially when I pick up equity or have a strong hand. Even if I had a hand like 4-5 here, 5-6, 8-9, 6-8, Jack-8, Jack-9, any club draw, a pair of 3s, a pair of 7s. I'm pretty much anything that has equity, I'm going to be betting here, even though it's multi-ways. Now, stack sizes would certainly change that. And with Taz Devil only having 4-12, I may not be as inclined to bet a 3 and then he jams and now I got to call it off or feel like I need to call it off. So with the ace 10, I certainly want to bet here. And I don't remember what Tiger bets, but let's take a look and see how much he bets here. So he goes with the standard half bet here. Now here's why I talked earlier about we need to change that bet, right? While we do need to stay balanced, board check texture and stack sizes change everything. Okay, let's think about some of the hands that may have got checked there that's going to be willing to call a bet on the turn. And we don't want to miss on getting maximum value for our hand here, okay? Every 7 is now going to call this turn bet, okay? Any amount. They'll call a pot size bet too, okay? Possibly, depending on who has the 3 and checked it back, is going to call with just a 3. Not so much Bond James, but certainly Abrizo is going to call with just a 3, a naked 3, King 3, 3-4, 2-3, 3-5, whatever 3 he limped in with, okay? Same thing with a 10. Bond James has a better chance of calling with just a naked 10, a Jack 10, King 10, Queen 10, 10-9, okay? And Abrizo definitely calling with a 10, and Taz is definitely calling with a 10, okay? If for some reason Abrizo, Bond James, or Taz decided to check back an ace here, okay, let's say he has a good ace. Let's say he limped in under the gun with an ace queen or an ace jack, and he thought he was looking to trap, okay? He's definitely getting involved as well. And so with 4 people in, though, you may think, well, if I bet small here, I have a chance to make somebody spew a little bit. Not really, not because you got too many people in the pot, all right? And they're also calling with every flush draw, and we want to charge maximum for any flush draw they're looking to call in the tournament, or any straight draw, the 6-8, the 4-5, the 5-6. Probably not in there very much, but deuce 5, 4 deuce, any of the 4-6, 8-9, Jack 8, Jack 9, any of those combos, we want to make sure we're charging full value for. And so Bond does call, which we should be fist pumping here. To me, like I said, he just called there with an ace or a 10. And then maybe some sort of straight draw, flush draw combo. Okay, and then the club hits the river here. Okay, and so I'm not a big fan of this check, okay? We bet too small on the turn. We're not going to get enough value here. And I don't like this check. And the reason why is we're bluff catching with too strong of a hand. I don't mind if we bet it on the turn with a 3, with a King 3, and we just had to check. We want to bluff catch with King 3. That makes more sense. Because with King 3, if I bet out, he's just not calling with worse often enough. But with the ace 10 here, he's calling with worse very, 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 very often. Okay? Only the club draw got there. So that's really the only thing we need to fade is the club draw. How many times he calling with just naked clubs with two people behind him? Probably a decent amount of the time because we didn't bet quite big enough. Okay. I think if I was Bond James with the club there, if I had, jack high clubs or nine high clubs or something like that, I'd want to be raising because I still only have nine high. So I'd want to sort of semi bluff with my clubs and I also want to price them out if they had a 10 or a 7 that they were trying to call with. Because I don't think it's very reasonable that Bond James ever has clubs in this spot. Okay. But if I made a good full value bet on the turn, which we didn't, we got a little bit too small of a bet, I can now make a good 3/4 bet here on the river to make sure I get full value for any ace two pairs that I beat, or maybe he calls the naked ace, right? And if he raises that, that lets me know a little bit more that he has the flush. So if I was Bond James here and I did have the flush and I felt like you were checking with a bluff catcher, I'd want to bet like 600 here and make you call with that hit because you would probably have to call. You do have ace removal, so you know it's not the nut flush. Okay, so not a big fan of this check. We're missing way too much value. And let's see what Bond James decides to do. And again, with the, the half pot bet. Now, I like the half pot bet here on this one because it's the blind versus blind. But again, let's just make sure we want to be careful not to do that too much, okay? But I do like that in this spot because it is blind versus blind. So he does decide to go ahead and fire a pretty good size bet at 214. So a nice healthy bet. He does go ahead and decide to fire that. I don't remember the hand exactly. I don't remember a lot of these hands. It was a while ago, but I don't think it's 8-9. So the play happened to work out because if we value bet ace 10 on that river, he never calls with 9 high. So if that was our plan, it worked. I just don't think that was our plan. I think we checked there because we were afraid to bet because of the clubs. And that was a mistake that I've seen made a long time, especially in cash games. People are so scared to bet fold, but with the right bet amount, that if you've seen my previous videos, I like betting there because then if I get raised, I feel more comfortable folding, okay? I can narrow his hand down of what he's doing that with and what he's not doing that with, right? But I don't really know what he's betting right there, right? So we almost put ourselves in a tougher spot, and if he was a little bit better, he would, like I said, he would have bet like double pot and really put us in a tough spot because we were bluff catching. Okay, and I'm assume Tiger would have called, but it would have been a very tough call had he bet 650 on that river. Been a very tough call. All right, now we pick up 3-10s over here after min raising, which I like. Everybody folded to us on the small blind, so a good min raise, and we min bet the flop. I would like to see a little bit bigger of a bet on this turn. We want to build a pot when we have a hand like 3-10s here. And a good decision to fold the queen jack. And we get min raised, and so let me go back to this hand just a little bit because we did misplay this hand. We actually because we weren't getting enough value for our hand, because like I said, I think we should have. So look at our stack size before we make this bet here. Okay, we've got 1,083. All right, and let's go back just a little bit more. Let's go back to the turn. All right, here we go. Okay, so looking at the turn, we have 1227. Okay, so here's the flop, half pot bet. I'm perfectly fine with that. On this turn, I now want to be looking at this pot, looking at my stack, looking at his stack. Okay. Our thought press now should be, how can I get maximum value with this 10, right? You can't always just assume you're beat. And so how can I get maximum value here? You can't be scared to run into it. You run into it, you run into it. It's part of it, okay? So what could I bet here? Like a 200 chip bet makes a lot of sense here because a 200 chip bet, even a 250 chip bet, that gets us below 1,000 chips after we bet. And that puts over 800, I believe, in the pot is how much that would put in there. Like 833, I think, is the exact amount. and that gives us like a jam on the river, which I think that would be the most optimal play. We would have lost, but that doesn't mean it wasn't the right play. So, you try to be too results oriented, but the small bet here and just the flat, I still don't think that he has a 10 very often, right? And then this card isn't really a great card, although I feel like Crazy Walnut, he would have raised with King Queen pre-flop. So if you think about this, when we min opened, we're probably getting 3-bet with a hand like King Queen. Still getting flatted enough, but probably getting through. Should be, especially King Queen suited, definitely getting 3-bet on that. And so we missed a chance to get maximum value on the river here. Number one, like I said, the pot should be about 833 right now. And so, we should be jamming here on this river. And then definitely here, we should be betting somewhere in the neighborhood of like 475. Like we want to get full value. And then calling off if he jams. Because like I said, I don't think he has a 10 there that often. I wouldn't. This is a spot where I'm just going to lose all my chips. Let's just say it that way. To me, it's just part of the game. So, and to be completely honest, since we played it the way we played it this way, with that raise on the river, that's never a bluff. In my experience, a min raise on the river, that is just never, ever, ever a bluff. That is, I want to value you to death because I don't want to jam in and you fold and leave your stack and fold a big hand. That is never, ever, 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 ever a bluff. A jam on the river is more likely a bluff than that is. That's never a bluff. A min bet on the river, again, never a bluff. So he has a better 10. He flopped a set of deuces. He has Jack 10, or he has the King Queen there. Every time you have the lowest 10 possible. And so maybe you're chopping some. Maybe he has 9, 10, but he's probably not doing that with 9, 10. As it turns out, it's possible he is because he did it with Queen 10. But anyway, probably going to have to fold at that point. Save your chips. It's still early. But we're still working with, almost 20 big blinds, about 18 big blinds. So we're still doing okay. And the only other thing I've noticed is, we got to watch the gameplay a little bit more, make some notes on what people are doing, and make really specific notes. Like however that hand played out there with Abrizo, and OMG, what's is he? Did he limp in with 7-9 out? What's he doing? Make really specific notes, multiple lines if you need to. And so normally with the 5-7 there, we would be definitely wanting to be limping behind, but we only have, like I said, 18, 17 big blinds. So we can't quite limp behind with that. That's something that, don't be scared to limp behind people who limp in front of you with pretty mediocre hands if you feel like your, board play is much stronger than theirs. Your flop, turn, and river play is a lot better than theirs. We're going to jump ahead just a little bit here. All right. So, and just ignore, Tiger likes to hover over his cards to see what he ends up making, but he's not in this pot over here. Hopefully that's not too confusing. So middle position, standard open to 3x with the blind still at 1530. See, I would definitely want to note there that DC Jeff, limped in from under the gun +1 with a queen jack offsuit. That should definitely be something that we note right there. We can exploit that type of play. Jump ahead just a little bit here. All right. So we pick up 6-6 under the gun, 15-30. Good spot to go ahead. Now, we've talked about balance several times. And if we're raising 3x so far on this table with all of our hands, the change to a min raise doesn't make a lot of sense. I think we should continue the 3x raise. We have a big enough chip stack to do so. And this hand is strong, so I think it's perfectly fine to go ahead and 3x that, because now we have to min raise with other hands and then 3x. You're trying to find too many spots of what to do, 3x or min raise, and we want to be doing one thing or another to stay balanced. And again, he's not in the hand with king deuce over here. Just didn't want you to get confused by that. All right, so we get 2 callers, and we're out of position we flop a very strong hand. So with the min raise, it is going to open up their ranges of what they call, especially Cool K. His range should be pretty wide. I don't know about Bond James. This is why notes will help in the future tremendously. But no idea what he flatted behind you with, but it was just a min raise, which, like I said, opens the door for them to call with a lot more hands. And then even me personally, if I was in Cool K's spot, I'm definitely calling behind with a lot of probably mid-range type of hands that I normally wouldn't call a regular raise with, or even open with. Because, min raise into the gun usually means pretty strong hands, and I know that I can try to put you on a tighter range and I can outplay you post-flop. So let's take a look and see what happens here. All right, so he decides to turn 6s into a bluff catcher, which may not be the right play because, okay, we're going to have the best hand here a large majority of the time where we can just go ahead and bet at this pot. We have a good chip stack. We can bet a good 180 or so at this pot and usually take it down. And if we get called, we're really not too worried about anything because, we got a 3 or an 8 for potentially what we would feel like is certainly the best hand. The only thing that we never have the best hand against is 6-8, but if we spike an 8, we're chopping, okay? So 6-9 when we spike an 8 is the only thing that really is not good for us. So even, let's just say we're up against a set right here, we're up against just top pair, we're still doing okay, or any over pairs, we're still doing really well equity-wise. And we had the lead in the hand. We always want to be continuing betting here when we have this much equity. So I don't think this is a good spot to turn it into a bluff catcher. And I don't know if that was the intentions or if the intentions were I would just feel more comfortable getting there before I put any money in the pot. So we lose the lead in the hand, and I believe if I remember, Bond decides to go ahead and bet. Yeah, Bond bets really, really small. And Cool K decides to call behind. Now, what's he betting? Okay, he's betting everything. He's betting 3-4, 3-5, 4-5, 4-6, 5-6, 6-7. He's betting his overpairs, but I don't think he's betting his overpairs that weak. To me, it feels like a really weak top, and I don't remember the hands, but a really weak top pair is what it feels like to me, with possibly a straight draw, okay? Or like I said, he's got the 4-6, the 5-6, the 3-4, the 3-5, the 5-8, 4-8, 7-8, any of those types of combos, which I said weak top pair, so that would include the 7-8. But I am not worried about his hand at all. But again, I don't like this because I feel more comfortable when I'm in the driver's seat and I'm betting. And based on their reactions to my betting, I can make better decisions about what type of ranges they had. When I give them the chance to take the lead, I now lose what I think their ranges could be. Okay, because Cool K calling 45 behind, getting that kind of price, his range is really wide. He still has like ace-10 and ace-jack and ace-queen, ace-king, even probably king-queen and king-jack. He still has that with backdoor flushes. And he has hands like any combo of an 8, Jack 8, 10 8, 9 8, 5 8, King 8, Ace 8, Ace 7, Ace 5, Ace 4, any kind of combos like that. He probably raises with a 6 here. Maybe not a naked 6, but like a 6 7, 6 5, 6 4. He definitely raises with hands like that. So let's see what Tiger decides to do here. All right, he decides just to call and simple shove here with Ace 10. And then, of course, now at this point, we got to check again because we don't want to be bluffing with the best hand. And now we still get a relatively small bet here, a less than third of the pot bet. And now there's not many plays for us that's going to make a lot of sense here. Nobody really ever hit a king there very often. The only person that hit a king there is Cool K, because he had just way too good of a price to call behind, which he wouldn't have if we'd have played the hand a little more appropriately and come out betting something about 75% of the pot. He wouldn't be able to call with his king highs, ace highs, or queen highs. So definitely have to call at this point. And that river now beats us more than the king beat us, right? Because like I talked about earlier, the 8-9s here are definitely all over his range, and in Bond's range as well. Nice little double up on the right-hand table. Easy spot, like I said, with the ace 10, just jam and hope you get called with worse. So it went check, check, which at this point, based on a pretty good bet, a little more than half a pot bet here on the river. Again, I would have more info had we played it. Had we been in the driver's seat betting and the same action took place, I would be willing to say that Cool K hit a 9 there. His betting is 9 for value. That's what I'd be willing to bet. Or possibly now has spiked a king with the king queen, like I talked, or king jack, and or king 8 even, and is willing to wants to get some value here. Now I got checked to him twice. I wouldn't think that's a bluff. Now the way we played Tiger played the hand, I think it opens that up to be a bluff, like a naked 8 that missed diamonds, a naked 6 that missed diamonds, something like that makes sense based on the way we played the hand. But if we'd have played it the way I sort of recommended to play it, I think that's a value bet with a king or a 9 there pretty much every time. But again, Bond James, I don't remember this hand that well. I think Bond just has like a really stupid deuce, or 7, like 7 deuce. Maybe he folds. I don't remember. Bond does make the call, and there it is. So a few things to really note here. If we come out betting close to pot, we probably get called by Bond, right? But I don't think Cool K can call behind a bigger bet. But let's just say they do both call, all right? Now this turn, which I wouldn't be that afraid of, and my hand would have still had plenty of equity with the 2 6s, I would have again bet something about 60 to 70% of the pot. That should have forced Bond to fold at that point, especially with Cool K behind him. That should get Bond out. Maybe not, okay? But it should get Bond out. And now Cool K will call now with the gutter, the 2 overs, which the 8 wouldn't be any good for him, but the gutter, in his mind, 2 overs, and the diamond draw. And when the 9 bricks, now we have a chance to turn our hand into a bluff catcher. Okay, now we have a chance to check and think about what type of cards did he have that he is now betting that we still beat. And I think there's enough of his range that would justify that. I think there's enough 5 6s, 4 6s, naked 8s. It'd be hard to factor in the backdoor diamond draw. That'd be more of a guess than anything. Obviously we lose to his 8-9s, we lose to his 6-9s. But I think we still beat enough of his range to justify a check call there, assuming Bond folded. So that hand could have been a lot differently. I would like to see it played a little different. I think it's it's a great spot to chip up and a profitable play there with the 6s. If we just sort of stay in the driver's seat, bet twice, and then look to check call as a bluff catcher on the river if we don't get there. go ahead and fast forward just a little bit. Good fold to a min raise, but just jack 4, king into the gun to fold. All right, so we get a 5-8. We get everybody folded us on the small blind, and we go ahead and open with 5-8, which I really, really like. We flop certainly a strong enough hand to go and continue betting here against Bond. See, again, I like notes here. I like to know that Bond called an opening raise under the gun +2, called our under the gun raise with just a 7 deuce suited, okay? We've got to get those notes in there because when we play later sit and goes and we get Bond at our table or anybody else that we've seen made silly plays, we want to be able to look at that information and know. Because now we get to a spot like this. Let's say this was a sit and go that's in the future, and we've got Bond here, and we open, and if we don't have that note, we can't remember how bad of a player he is, and therefore it can change the way we play this hand if we don't have more information on him. All right, good min open there with king 8 of clubs. And of course, we expect Bond to call. And Cool K is probably pretty loose calling as well. And I wouldn't really put notes in there about just calls wide. I would put more specifically, I open or called under the gun raise at under the gun +2 with 7 deuce suited. Something more specific that just calls wide. So weird play. Bond bets out. Cool K min raises and forces us to fold there with our king 8. And a good limp behind there with ace 8. Again, we don't know that much about WAP, but let's just say that we had a note on WAP that he, had called some other hand lighter or something like that, or, got to showdown super light for a ton of chips. We need to know those specific details because then I think we could look to isolate WAP in that spot based on that knowledge. But without that type of knowledge, I just don't think ace 8 suited is really good enough to ISO in that spot. I'd rather limp behind and play it like a small pocket pair. And again, now we've got 4 players in the pot. Let's look just to bump that bet up just a little bit. Let's get it more in the 160 range, 175 range. Let's get that initial bet up just a little bit higher. A couple things. We want to get more value when they're going to call with all their range that connects with this board, the 5-6, the 5-8, the 3-5, all those types of hands, and even worse aces. We want to make sure we're getting maximum value for that. Let's go ahead and fast forward just a little bit here. All right, we pick up deuces with a good enough stack, and I think this is a good spot to go ahead and min raise. The blinds are now 25 and 50. All right, and so it's actually a pretty good flop for us. He fires right out for 150 with a really small stack behind. That doesn't give us a lot of room to operate. Okay, now I know there are players who are willing to do that right there with their ace highs and their king highs, and they're just looking to try to take the pot down right then and there. So that would be my general reason for calling here. I wouldn't call to hit a deuce. I would call just because I don't want to be opening, get donked into, and be folding too often. okay? But I sort of have the expectation if I don't hit a deuce on the turn, I'm probably going to fold out this turn. So let's see what Tiger decides to do. I think that's a good call. And now I actually personally like that card because people really love to give you credit for an ace when you call there. However, based on his stack size and the pot size, I don't think he's ever giving up when that card hits. I think he's more likely to fire when he doesn't have an ace there. So to me, I think he spikes the ace there a ton. He's never given, like, let's say he had 10 jack, king jack, or queen jack. He's never just check giving up on this turn with his stack size and the pot size. It's just never happening. Okay. So that feels like he really spiked that ace right in that spot. Had he moved in, I would be much more excited to call if he moves in than I am if he checks there. And so let's think about that now. We basically bet what, about 40% of his stack, and once he calls that, that puts almost 1,200 in the pot, about 1170-ish, 80-ish in the pot if he once he calls that, and he's only going to have 500, a little more than 500 behind. So not a huge fan of this bet if this bet is a bluff. And, you know, I think this bet should be a bluff. I don't think that this, if we are going to try to represent an ace here, this bet should be a bluff. He's not calling with worse than deuces. So if he's not calling with worse than deuces, then our bet could be smaller. Okay, it could be much, much smaller because he's going to fold all the hands that are worse than deuces. And so we're not having to risk as much by betting when we bet 293. So that's something to sort of think about there. And he should be jamming over the top with all of his aces, or, you know, if he did have a 4 or a jack, he should be jamming over the top here. And that makes an easy fold there. When he flats, we're so dead. We're completely dead. It's a 4 every time. It could be jacks full. It could be aces full. We're 100% dead when he flats. So got to give up. There's nothing he's going to fold or should be folding for 514. So just need to give up that spot. And, you know, going back to the turn bet sizing, if we're bluffing, we should just jam. If we're value betting, we should bet much, much, much smaller. So let's go ahead and fast forward just a little bit. Easy spot over here on the right-hand table. We pick up ace queen suited under the gun. We've got 20 big blinds, and so I think a little less than 20 big blinds, so perfectly fine with shoving. We have enough big blinds, however, to where we could min open, and we could look for someone to spew on top of that and be able to call it off. But again, jamming is perfectly fine as well. There's really no, you know, no super wrong play to be had there. And so right here, like Bond, James limp under the gun. If this hand gets to showdown, we want more notes in there. We want another second line of notes of what he is limping under the gun with. Okay. So we flop bottom pair against what we know is a pretty reckless player. Could be in there with anything. And don't know much about Dan. And on this turn, we pick up 2 pair. And again, on turns, when I have a hand or a hand with good equity, or I usually never do it like a pure bluff, right? Like right here, a pure bluff would be like jack deuce, just pure bluff, you know, really no pair, no draw, no nothing. I'm not gonna do it with a hand like that. But even like 8 deuce, I'm gonna fire. I've got a gutter. They both checked. I want to be the aggressor, and I want to get chips into the pot. I want to be betting. I feel more comfortable about where they're at when I'm betting. So we decided to check here. I don't know if the plan was to check raise. And then we hit a good, this is still, a 9 is still a good river. Nobody checked. So nobody is checking a 9 on that flop and that turn. So again, not real sure why we checked again. I would much rather see just a full pot bet here on the river because we're going to get called sometimes by like ace high, and should be all their 5s and 7s we should be getting called with. And it checks around, and I'm not sure what either one of them have. I can't remember if Tiger decided to look at the hand history. Yeah, he does. Good. So we're definitely getting called by ace king from Bon James. So I would have really liked to bet there on the river. It folds around to us. King 7 against Bon James is certainly good enough to go ahead and min open. And he does, so that's good. And I would even, if he jammed there, I consider calling. All right, so taking a look at our stack here. 470 in the pot. That's 25% of our stack. Actually, a little bit more than 25% of our stack. And that's a great board for us. Okay, paired boards, we want to be following up with bets on paired boards. And, you know, if we have that fundamental going into the sit and goes, then we're willing to die on that hill with that fundamental. And if we lose a big pot or we bust on that fundamental, that's okay. That's part of why we're playing. That's part of our strategy. That's what that's what we're doing. And if it's not going to work sometimes because it's variance, it's math. It's just not going to work out every time. But in the long run, it should be working. So I think Tiger decides to check here, and I don't like. This is not a great bluff catcher. I think it will work sometimes, but we're just giving up. He knows we're giving up way too much here, and we're giving him the lead, and he gets to control all the action. So if I'm Bon James here, I mean, I'm going to bet a really significant amount, somewhere in the high 300s, possibly 400 or low 400s, and really put the pressure on. And he decides to check back. And so is he checking back a 4 there? Could be, or a 9, could be. The problem with when we check coming off the flop, when we check like that, we now have just no idea. Again, that's why I like betting. If I bet there a pretty good amount, 350, 325, you could bet half pot, totally fine too, 235, 250, something like that. When he calls, it now narrows my idea of what he probably has, okay? And that's the goal, is I want to be able to narrow the field of what they have, narrow their range down to something that makes sense. So we decided to min bet here. And if I'm Bon James, I'm just going to bomb on you right here. I think he ends up min raising, which is really stupid. Because if I'm Tiger, I'm 100% calling this min raise every single time. His idea of raising is good. The min raise is bad. He should have been bombing there. He should have, if you bet 100, I would take all my bluffs there and just make it like 500 and make you have to fold based on your chip stack. He decides to min raise, and Tiger should be 100% calling this, looking to check call 100% of the rivers. That play in the long run is just not going to work. We can't min open, check the flop, min bet the turn, and then fold to a min raise on the turn. That long term, we're gonna bleed way too many chips doing that. So I would rather see you lose your entire stack off your fundamentals than to play like that right there. That's just really poor fundamentals. We should be looking to take advantage of people who play that way, exploit those type of plays. Little tough love there for Tiger King, who looks like had a really off night because has been playing really well. Has been, like I said, tripled his bankroll in about 2 months now. So doing really well, doing some great things, playing really well. Had some good discipline for the most part with his bankroll, but maybe he's had an off night, which is good. I think you learn more from these sessions. It's like playing a bad game of baseball. You learn a heck of a lot more when you play bad than you do when you beat a team that's not very good. All right, this is going to be definitely controversial. I do not like shoving my deuces right here. I just don't. I know that Vito is probably only calling with his pretty good hands, but he does only have 10 big blinds. So he's maybe looking to mix it up a little bit lighter. And we're just not ahead of enough hands when we get called. We're just not. And we still have 10 big blinds. I know that seems low, but in these sit and goes, you're not in that bad of shape. One double up, you're right back in there. So I just don't love this jam. I think you could find a better spot. I don't hate it, but I'd rather do this with ace deuce. I think it gives you more of an opportunity than deuces does when you get called, because with deuces you're not beating 10-8 suited. You're slightly behind 10-8 suited. So there's not enough hands you're ahead of. The only hand you're really, really ahead of is ace deuce, or less. Obviously, any deuce less, and you're slightly ahead of like ace king offsuit and some other offsuited high cards. But a lot of times you're just going to be behind, and I don't know. I just don't love it. I think there's better spots. If I remember correctly, I think he gets really unlucky here, though. He runs into two really premium hands, which is just unfortunate. And with that said, with 10 big blinds, you can't make too many mistakes. So I don't know that the deuces are a mistake per se. I just think we could find something better. And he runs right into the tens. I just think we could wait and find something better. But he does spike a deuce, so we get the nice double up there. If we had more chips, limping behind with 8-5 suited would be a nice play, but we don't have enough chips to do so. We only got 15 big blinds. Let's go ahead and fast forward a little bit here. Pick up jack 9 and deuce 5, two easy spots to fold. Same thing with queen 9. We're certainly limited on the table on the left with our chip stack. With only 15 big blinds, we can't really maneuver as much. And so here we pick up king, queen suited under the gun. Good argument for should we jam all in or should we just min raise? That's definitely a good argument there. I like min raising because I can fold to a 3-bet and save my chips. So really tough spot here. Really, really, really tough spot. We certainly can never come out checking, right? Because we can't bluff catch really with king, queen high in this spot with our chips. We've got 50% of our chips are in the middle, okay, of our stack. So, what type of plan can we make here? If we bet about 300, that puts us down to 991. If we have to bet fold, we're left with less than 10 big blinds. Not a great spot. So I would like either we bet really low, like maybe 150 with the intentions of bet folding, or you could argue just to go ahead and jam here. Maybe he folds out a lot of his ace tens and ace eights and ace sevens, even ace jack, maybe even ace queen. But with our chip stack, we're just really crippled on our options of what we could do here. So let's see what Tiger decides to do. And he makes a pretty good bet. 200, I think, is a good play there. If you have the intention of bet folding, which we should, obviously. Otherwise, we should have just jammed if we weren't going to bet fold, because we're not getting to spew with less than king, queen high. So he's always going to have us beat if we're bet calling there. So good bet there. Really good to see that. Good 200 chip bet. All right, we pick up ace 10 in the small blind with 17 big blinds. And again, as we continue to make more notes, OMG has been playing what I've noticed kind of all over the place. He's limped in, he's min raised, he's 3x'd. I really don't like this call here against anybody with ace 10 offsuit out of the small blind. It is just not strong enough. You are going to have to be playing out of position with a mediocre ace and a mediocre, or a good 10, but a mediocre ace in a spot where OMG is just going to be able to really crush you. And so I like a 3-bet as a bluff with the idea of jamming every flop. So if it moved the mouse here, I could see, so 1591, yes. So had we 3-bet, we could have 3-bet it to about 600, putting 400 more chips in for us, 400 more, that put 1,400 in the middle. We could just jam every flop, right? And A, hope we get there, or B, just hope they miss and they fold. But I don't like just calling, because now a little more than a third of our chips are in the middle pot to stack, and we're out of position in a very uncomfortable spot. So like I said, you hate to be calling out of the small blind here, just having to check fold too often this late in the game. Again, we're just bleeding too many chips. I mean, look, we're having to fold for 100. You know, we're getting 9-1 on a bet there. You know, almost 9-1 on a bet, and we're having to fold because our hand, unfortunately, is just too weak. So goes check check there, and we spike an ace. So I don't remember this hand at all, but I do remember seeing the call the raise there from the small blind, which I didn't love. I think ONG bets and we get a fold from Bond. Yeah, so pretty likely we still didn't have the best hand, even with the ace on the river. Let's go ahead and fast forward just a little bit. Again, a lot of all-in plays, a lot of showdown cards. Probably need to be getting some notes on some players. 17 big blinds. I like this open here, but so earlier we talked about opening with an intent on folding. In this spot, I like the open and call, although we have no notes on OMG. I don't know how often he's been shoving with light hands, but from the cutoff, our range should be super wide, so his jamming range should be even wider. All right, so I think that this is definitely worthy of a call, and you're going to run into the top of his range from time to time, of course, but I still think, and this is pretty much the sit and go right here, I still think it's a call because he should be jamming pretty light over the top of you because he has fold equity. And so I think, although many may argue that King Queen is too weak, I actually think it's strong enough because you cover enough of his range. He decides to go ahead and make the call. Unfortunately, ran into the top of OMG's range, but was lucky enough to split the pot there with both making a straight. Go ahead and fast forward just a little bit here. All right, interesting spot here. We pick up Queen Jack in the small blind with 10 big blinds. And I think this spot is really close. I think that you can argue a fold here. And, you know, you could definitely argue a jam. You pick up 300 and, because our 75 is already dead. So you pick up, what, 305 chips there or 315 chips. So you definitely could have argued an all in as well. I think you kind of go both ways there. If you do ship all in with the Queen Jack, it's really a bluff. It's not much for value. I don't know how often he's calling off half his stack with worse. So really fortunate enough to pick up the queens here. And with the open to 300, that's an easy jam spot with queens. And OMG decides to go ahead and fold there. So kind of curious what he opened with. If he folded a pretty big hand or if he was just opening light. And a lot of guys do like to open under the gun as a bluff with really wide ranges. So this is something I found earlier too. We were hitting the fold button too early, no action before us, and we're looking to fold here. We're not looking to fold that spot if it gets folded around to us. We have, what, 8 big blinds roughly. So we're certainly looking to jam. Now, knob jams for us, so now we do have to fold. But if he had folded, that's an easy jam there with the 8-9. A lot of times I'd like to min open a hand like this with no small blind though. Perfectly fine, just go ahead and folding here, saving your chips. It just would be better if we picked up a little bit more off of that. Would love to know what Crazy Wall is limping in with in this spot. I don't remember if it gets to showdown value or showdown or not. It does not. Go ahead and fast forward just a little bit here. And so this spot again, really tough. We're doing it as a bluff, obviously, but you know, I think Tiger was looking to just conserve some chips. I think he thought he probably had a little bit of an edge on the field and just didn't need to increase any variance there. And I think that's probably okay to do so. Again, OMG with the raise under the gun. And so I don't remember if this hand goes to showdown value, but I would love to, or it goes to showdown, but I'd love to see it go to showdown because I'd love to see what he's raising under the gun with. Standard all in with the kings with only about 8 big blinds. And kind of unfortunate not to get a call there. So unfortunately, got to fold the Jack 9. King Jack pretty tough. I think this is a hand that you can open with the intentions of folding to a 3-bet, and I think that's what he decides to do. He goes ahead and min opens, and I believe everybody folds. But if somebody 3-bets here, this hand's okay to open and fold, and so that would make you argue the point: should I be doing that with more hands? That answer is yes, probably so. Probably need to be opening, finding some spots to open just a little bit wider from under the gun and under the gun +1 in the 25, 50 stages and later. Try to be opening there and looking to pick up more chips. Decides to min raise with the intentions of, I believe he was going to min raise. If he gets re-raised, he was just going to fold. And he had more chips there to do that. So sitting in a good spot now with 2,400. Again, I think he's got a pretty good edge on the field. Just got to pick up some good cards and run pretty good. Now, I can't tell if he's in this spot. Let's go back here real quick and see if he limped in. No, he just hit the, pulled up his cards. Did not limp in there. Jack 4 suited. I think it's good enough to go ahead and open. I can't remember what he did here, but I would go ahead. Again, if you sort of set that standard of doing that, you've been chipping up enough to, feel okay about losing some of it back. So I think Jack 4 suited is good enough to go ahead and min open. And again, if we're playing well post flop, we feel really comfortable when we get called. And to me, the hand plays easy. If I open and get 3-bet, I can just fold. It's not a good hand. I'm bluffing with it. But we got to be willing to chip up. Could argue the same thing there with Queen 9. We need to be chipping up in these spots. We need to be willing to open. Again, be willing to die on that hill. Be willing to die on, hey, this is my fundamentals. This is how I play. And it just didn't work out this time. Instead, if we don't have that good base of fundamental play, then we never really have a chance to know if how we're playing is variance or how we're playing is just not good, profitable poker. I'm going to pause this for just a sec. some action here. See, I think if we had more chips and we chipped up better, I'd like to be opening up Jack 9 under the gun. Not for value, of course, as a bluff, but I think if people are paying attention, um, if people are paying attention to those spots, they've realized your under the gun open percentage is super, super low. And so they're just going to be folding too much when you do open, which is a good thing. We can take advantage of that. But your range is also just not wide enough. And so here's another really tough spot. I think we need to be three betting there a lot too. And I know it really does raise the variance. But how wide is he opening? Again, if we had some notes, we would know a little bit more. So that's going to be part of it, is taking more notes. But he should be opening there a ton. And just off of that alone, I think ace eight is strong enough with the ace removal to go ahead and just jam in that spot. Again, I know it increases the variance, but we just can't be hitting that fold button too many times. And I also don't like the check here. I think that's a jam with ace four. I think that he limped. He limped under the gun. Bond limps with an unbelievably wide range. Therefore, jamming the ace four seems really standard with only 5 big blinds. So I think that was a mistake there checking. Another tough spot with the ace three. I think you can fold here, but I also think you could justify some calls. I think that's the second time he's done that to us. So I think it's close. Definitely need to jam the ace six. We've only got 8, 7 with the antes. We got about 7 big blinds effective. Ace six, 5-handed. It's just good enough. We put ourselves in a tough spot chip wise. We just got to go ahead and roll with it. I remember this spot really well. I think this is super debatable. Now, had somebody moved all in for our chips, oddly enough, I think I like that call better than, you're calling 405 more, which obviously you're getting the right price, but, we're only dominating, ace deuce, ace three, ace four, and deuces and threes. Everything else is coin flipping with us or beating us. So, he's obviously moving in really wide, and it includes some deuces and threes and fours, and um, but I just don't think we're winning enough here, and it's just going to absolutely cripple us to lose this. Like I said, I'd rather have the dice roll of calling off all my chips with the chance to double up. That really increases my chances of winning this tournament. Where if I win this spot here, I only get to 2,000. It doesn't change my position that much, and so I think folding here probably makes more sense. But again, this late in the tournament, I don't know. Calling isn't the worst thing either. And unfortunately, he finally loses a flip. I think King Nine suited might even be slightly ahead there, but finally loses a flip there. Um, easy jam with the ace queen. And to be quite honest, with only 6 big blinds, I don't mind jamming the 6-9 of hearts there. I don't mind jamming that. We're not in a good spot. I think this type of fold here, and rightfully so, probably lines up more with a double or nothing type of sit and go. We're trying to win first place. We're not trying to squeeze our way into third place here. We're trying to win, and we need a lot of chips, and we've only got 6 big blinds, so we need to be definitely shipping in that spot, looking to double up. And same thing goes for the table on the left here. We're in a bad spot in a bad way, chip wise. 4 big blinds. We need to be shipping it and just trying to get lucky at this point. You take the percentage to win the hand with the percentage of winning the sit and go, and the percentage of winning the hand is much higher than the percentage of winning the sit and go. So take that into effect. Our odds of winning the sit and go right now are not very good. I even think Jack 3 of diamonds there was probably good enough. Again, we've got 4 big blinds. Queen 3, good enough. Get it in. You got 4 big blinds. You're trying to win the sit and go, not just slide your way into third place. Deuce 3, I guess you could probably go ahead and fold there to a min raise. Jack 5 is going to be good enough. And now unfortunately we're so low on chips that we are looking now just to squeeze into third place and try to salvage some of our money back. Yeah, easy ship with the ace king, but unfortunately I think we and it's perfectly fine and normal. Typically Tiger plays just to double up or nothing sit and goes, and that's kind of the type of approach we took to this sit and go. We didn't quite risk as much as we probably should have, and therefore we played a strategy of just getting in there. Getting in there and folding too much and looking to place up versus chip up. Maybe the hand on the left, I think I told him to fold the Jack 9, which I still feel like it was the right fold because, yeah, I mean, he was behind pretty significantly there against 2 players. And so even though I know he has no chips, I think we were just trying to fade the WAP up there, just trying to fade him at this point and squeeze him to third place. And King 7 was definitely good enough there. Ace Queen, obviously good enough there to ship, and so is the King 10 suited. And I believe, if I remember, Chris just wasn't quite fortunate enough to pick up any hands here or any cards here on the flop or turn the river with the Ace Queen. And but to me, again, that's a product that we just didn't quite chip up enough, and hopefully, I've given some things that can help us learn to chip up a little bit better, take a little bit more of an aggressive approach, so that we could better understand, where our players' range are, and how we can be a little bit more profitable in these sit and goes. Again, we got to take a first place mentality, not just let's get in there and just cash. If we constantly cash third place in sit and goes, it's just not going to be good enough. Simple spot here. You got 4s. You got 5 big blinds, so easy spot to ship. And again, spikes another 4, spikes a 4 on the river. So great spot, chipped up really well, sitting in a really good spot now. Again, I've noticed OMG really likes to open under the gun a ton, which is a strategy that I take on. So I think that's exploitable. Now it's going to raise our variance, but I think that we need to be either flatting him there and forcing him to play out of position, or just go ahead and re-raise him and chipping on him. And so again, we're just not chipping up enough. We have not set the precedent that we're going to be opening enough, and we're not chipping up enough. I know it seems like we're afraid of opening and having to fold, but that's okay. If you're opening enough, you're chipping up enough to count to get back to counter the times that you're having to open fold. So um, that money definitely comes back to you. Trying to remember the action here. I don't quite remember what kind of took place for us to or for Tiger to lose several of his chips here. Um, yeah, I mean this is a ship spot for sure. You got a good enough head. I don't like a min raise here. Just ship it. You have less than 10 big blinds. They have 5 big blinds and 6 big blinds, maybe even slightly less effectively. Good, yeah, good decision to go ahead and ship. I couldn't remember what the action was. Um, yeah, just got incredibly unlucky. Ran into 2 huge hands. That's just part of it. No fault there to anybody. Nothing you can do about that. You just ran into 2 huge hands. Everybody had really short stacks. That's what happens at these levels. And it's okay. It's just part of it. I don't know what he ends up getting it in there with, but wouldn't have any of these hands that he had there. Just get it in. It's fine. Takes the 8-3, loses with 8-3, and that kind of concludes it. So. Um, kind of tough to bubble both the tables, but I think hopefully with some of the adjustments we can make a little better run next time. And really enjoyed Tiger letting me analyze his play and look at how he played a couple sit and goes. And again, I don't think he played terrible. I just think there's some spots where we can play better. We can chip up more. Again, be the aggressor, be willing to fire at some pots and turns, and hopefully pick up some wins. So looking forward to doing that again. And thank you guys for letting me commentate.